right, so let's start off with why we're in women's health. Can you share a little bit about your journey and why you are so interested in working in women's health? Why don't we start with you?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you for BioUtah for putting this summit on. This has just been incredible, and thank you, Liz, for everything that you do. For me, it was pretty simple. Obviously, being a woman, I have experienced just about everything that you could possibly have as far as issues with women's health. Endometriosis, uterine fibroids, infertility, had to do 2 rounds of IVF for both of my daughters. And so I understand the struggle as a woman. And so I also understand the need for better innovation in this space and why it's so important that we really make this topic one of importance for everybody to be involved, both men and women. So for me, it was personal, and I bring that every single day in what we do, and I'm so grateful to each one of you for sharing in that passion.
Thank you so much, Angela. And so one of the reasons I started in women's health, initially when I graduated from college, I started working at a women's health company, and I have been doing women's health for 15 years. But very specifically, what led me to start a women's health company is maybe about 10, 15 years ago, I was presenting in front of a board of directors where I was the only woman. This was a women's health company. This was a maternal fetal medicine product. And 11 men were sitting discussing what it feels like to do a speculum exam and how women feel about it. And there wasn't a single woman at the table, and nobody even thought to ask me how was my experience or how do women feel about it. They just assumed women either didn't like it or were okay with it or whatever it was from their own perspective. And what that said to me is how important it is to have women leading women's health companies. And even in the previous session where we saw the leaders presenting, vast majority were in fact men, and this is, I think, what we're still seeing. And it's so important to have that voice, have voice of the women, have voice of the patient represented as well.
Yeah, very interesting. All right. So there's a lot of attention on women's health. We have the White House Initiative on Women's Health Research. We have the $110 million from ARPA-H, the executive order with 20 different directives across government. So a lot of things have been happening with government. And then on the private side, there's been an elevated interest in women's health. How is that impacting you with your companies? We'd love to get your take on that. Why don't we start with you this time, Anna?
Absolutely. So it's really exciting about the amount of discussion, emphasis. I think people are finally seeing how much of a return there is in women's health, as previously was considered a niche. I think we've done all a very, very good job to dispel that. And I know there were many sessions today talking about that particular topic. We're in fact majority of the population, not the minority. And there's a real economic impact and a real return. In terms of government, I think for us it was a little disappointing that ARPA-H went mostly to public companies, to universities, rather than startups where a lot of the real innovation happens. But I think that the tide is starting to change. There's a lot of talk about it. I think a lot of the women-specific conditions are being demystified, and I know that there is more data that is starting to being collected on women-specific conditions as well, which is so important. If anybody hasn't read the book Invisible Women, they should. It's so interesting and important, some of the things that are brought up in that. But I think overall, we're seeing a lot more interest in the private equity space. There is funds that are now very specific to women's health. And I think it's just the size of the funds that is very important, and especially as a later stage company, how much funding we will need to bring in order to generate those really big blockbuster returns.
Yep. What about you, Angela?
So I have a little bit of an interesting perspective because I have been in the medical device industry now for close to 25 years. It doesn't seem that long, but I've always been in the startup space. And, I started out in the peripheral vascular. I've been a part of interventional cardiology. I've been a part of ENT. I feel like I've been a part of just about every part of the body now. And I've also seen it on the side of being a investor myself. And it's been very interesting to me now that I'm a CEO of a women's health company, just to see the huge gap of the interest, the motivation of being able to fund into women's health companies. I'm grateful for the initiatives that's been put forth by the White House, here as of late, and to see the renewed interest in women's health, because it's truly been missing. And I've seen that clearly, especially on the funding side. And so I think, especially if we can start engaging conversations more so to show what kind of market opportunity that women's health is, that I think you're going to have the ability to engage more investors, which primarily has been, more of your male counterparts. And most of them, they don't have an interest in women's body. It's not that they don't love us, but they just don't want to talk about, women's health. It's something that's kind of foreign to them. And so for a long time, women's health has been kind of taboo, and that's what I have seen from my side, from the funding side of it, which is absolutely detrimental to the success of startup companies and being able to bring innovation forward. From the standpoint of once you are able to get your technology to market, that's a whole nother story. Whenever I started in this space 25 years ago, a startup company that brought an innovative technology, they could go to a physician, and if that physician really saw the clinical benefit in it, they could say, sure, I have a patient on this day, why don't you bring it in? I'd really like to try it out. And you could bring it in. And, if they loved it, if it made clinical sense for their patient, the physician could make that decision then to have that. Now, those days are gone. And now the red tape that a physician has to go through just to even get a product into the hospital to trial it can take up to a year, and they have to go before a board of peers with a lot of times other physicians that have no idea, what the procedure that this technology is using. And so there's just so much red tape that has entered in the process of bringing innovation to market, and it's really taking the decision making away from the physicians a lot. So I've seen that over the course of the years and seen how that has impacted the success of being able to bring innovation, and especially in women's health. And lastly, I'll leave it at this. The other big factor that I have seen that has kind of affected, I think, women's health too, is really engaging the OBGYN community and really getting them excited about innovation, getting them to be a part of whether it's investing in these new technologies that they're going to be using themselves, getting them just really a part of it from the very beginning and getting that motivation going. Because what I have seen is, unlike interventional cardiology or vascular surgery, where, a lot of times innovation, it's so great and they're constantly coming out with new things. Those physicians are really engaged, they're really excited. But I feel like a lot of the OBGYNs have kind of just been put in the shadows, and they kind of feel like they've been left out. And so it's stopped their engagement. And so I really think that if we can get their engagement back, that's going to go a long way in helping us secure innovation into the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. So clinicians are really key to getting innovation into the hands of patients. So we need the investors, but we also need the actual clinicians, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I mean, physicians, they're the end user of this. If they're not going to be using it, there's no market. It doesn't matter how great of a technology that you have. And so you really need to be able to start engaging those physicians from the very beginning and getting them on board to being a huge advocate for what you're doing. And that's going to help. It's really strong for other investors, especially whether you're going into the VC route or just family offices in general. It's really nice for them to be able to see, when they're looking at cap tables within your company, that the physicians that this technology is being created for, they're investing in this. They believe in it enough that they're like, yeah, I'm going to be on board with this. Let's get on this. So from the funding standpoint, there is something to be said for that inclusion. But once you bring it to market, that is really where you're going to need your physician advocacy to be able to get past some of this bureaucracy that's within the hospital system to get it in, so that the patients can actually benefit from this technology. If not, it's going to be left out in the cold.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So another big part of women's health is closing gaps. And so with any innovation, there has to be sort of an unmet need that we're addressing. So do you want to start off, Anna, with describe to us the unmet need that you're addressing and how that's guiding your company's growth?
Absolutely. So we are working in the early detection of ovarian cancer, and today there's very little tools to detect ovarian cancer. It affects 1 in 78 women, and it takes 9 months on average to diagnose, with the U.S. being the longest in the world. And what is happening today is that women are coming into their doctor, their provider, typically their OBGYN, and they say, I have abdominal pain, I have either urinary incontinence or changes in my bowel movements, and typically they are told to go on a diet and exercise. And the women begin a very long diagnostic odyssey in which where they see on average 4 different providers. About 10% of women are sent to colonoscopy, about another 30% of women get a cytoscopy before they're even sent to imaging for any potential discovery of what is happening. And so the women end up spinning in the healthcare system. About 30% of them get prescribed antidepressants because they are told this is all in your head, until finally they end up in an oncologist's office, at which point they're typically late stage disease. Ovarian cancer grows very, very quickly from stage 1 to 4 in under a year. And so the fact that they are in this diagnostic odyssey for 9 months really we believe is the time that the disease progresses quite significantly. And so the tools that we are developing are specifically for those women who are coming in, they're complaining of signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer that are well defined, even though it is believed to be a silent disease that has been debunked. And a lot of it has to do with the education of the providers also about the symptoms, and also giving them the tools to say, okay, if a woman has particular symptoms, this is what you can do next to guide the woman and triage the woman to the right provider faster. Mm-hmm. And we believe that we can bring very significant impact to the quality of life, to the treatment, catching the cancer earlier, so that the women have much better chances of survival.
Yeah, and I've worked in the ovarian cancer space a bit, and it has the highest mortality rate of any single sex-based cancer. It's like a 50% mortality rate. So catching it early is huge to saving lives.
That's right. It's lower than 50%. That's right. 5-year survival rate is lower than 50%. High-grade serous, which is the most prevalent, can be as low as 18% 5-year survival rate. So ovarian cancer is also a very heterogeneous disease, and depending on which subtype you have, and a lot of the rarer subtypes actually drive that survival rate overall number higher. So it's so important that this is an area where we have progress.
Yeah. And then, sorry, but one other thing. You said that in the U.S., it takes the longest time to, why is that?
There are multiple factors. I think one is access to our healthcare system. So for example, one of my co-founders is from the UK, and he's like, every time I have a tickle in my throat, I go to the doctor because it's available. In the US, typically, patients are sicker by the time they enter the healthcare system because they are waiting until their symptoms to manifest to get there. That's only one area, right? A second area is that we have a very fractured healthcare system as well, where there's a lot of different specialties and you are kind of sent around, and the amount of time you spend waiting for appointments to get a referral right through your payer, depending on what type of plan you have, you may not be able to go directly to your appointment. You have to get a referral. You wait to get seen, and so on. And again, in this fast-growing cancer, there was a poster just presented last month that the cancer doubles in size every 2 months. Oh. So imagine you are on a wait list for a gastroenterologist for 2 months. Okay, your cancer doubled in size. Then you're on a wait list for maybe a urologist for 2 months or whatever it might be. Your cancer has doubled in size. And so by the time you arrive at gynecology oncology, you are late stage. And not to mention, there's only 800 gynecology oncologists in the US. Even to get referred to them, there's a significant amount of screening that's being done and a lot of serial testing. So about 10% of all US women have an adnexal mass, which is a mass that is located let's say like on your uterus, ovaries, and so on. And then they say, okay, well, let's see if it grows. Let's test it again in a couple of months later. And so what they're doing is serial imaging, serial of looking at certain biomarkers that aren't very specific to see if the tumor is growing. And only then can you get an actual referral to a gynecologist, oncologist. So it's really a multifaceted problem.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. Empress Medical. Can you talk about the unmet need that you're addressing?
Yeah. First, to you, that's pretty incredible. So, wow, a lot of information there. Thank you. So Empress Medical, we're a US-based startup company through Dr. Michael Towle. He's an interventional radiologist by trade. He was the pioneer of uterine fibroid embolizations back in the day, and he's just a really brilliant clinician who believes so much in women's health. So much so that he was like, this is ridiculous. There's way too many women that are having hysterectomies, and there's way too many women who are of childbearing age that have uterine fibroids that are having to suffer from uterine fibroid removal and put at risk future pregnancy, because the likelihood of that woman already having a higher rate of issues of getting pregnant is very likely. If she's got uterine fibroids, she likely has other underlying health conditions like endometriosis, as I spoke about earlier. So he basically said there had to be a better way. So Empress was formed, and he invented a technology called Orbital. Orbital will be the world's first minimally invasive treatment for uterine fibroids by using just a simple suture to basically go around the tissue, and it chokes. In essence, it just chokes the fibroid and causes necrosis, and the tissue will end up just being resolved by the body. And the sutures are bioabsorbable. As a result, there are no surrounding tissue that's harmed, so there's no risk to pregnancy. So we are extremely excited to be able to have this technology come to market. There's a huge unmet need for a technology such as this. Uterine fibroids affect more than 27 million women here in the US annually. And primarily, the way to treat those are either hysterectomy or myomectomy, which is surgical removal of the tumor, or as of late, you're starting to see more of the heat-based therapies for heat ablation. The problem is that the majority of those, obviously hysterectomy removes all childbearing ability, and your heat ablation causes damage to the surrounding tissue. So with this technology, we're going to be able to meet that huge unmet need, in which the National Institute of Health and Johns Hopkins University has published a study reporting that anywhere between 40 to 70% of women that experience uterine fibroids are within childbearing age. And so this is a huge opportunity for us to do something good. And women, as I was the case, I wish this technology was around whenever I was having to face looking at, do I continue to suffer from uterine fibroids, which is truly, they're benign tumors, but they can be debilitating for women. Do you suffer through that, or do you risk getting pregnant whenever you've been trying so hard and had several failed attempts to go? So that shouldn't be the case for women. We should do better. We can do better, and that's what we're doing here at Empress. And so we're really excited about this technology, and we highly encourage, if there's any investors here, to come and talk with us, because we're so close with this. We expect this to be in the U.S. here in the year 2027, and we would love for you to be a part of this journey, because this technology is truly remarkable, and it is going to change lives, not just here in the U.S., but across the globe.
Yeah, and I read it's something like 70 to 80% of all women will get fibroids at some point. So it's
very prevalent. Women of color are disproportionately affected, by this disease. And like I said, it's very debilitating. It's heavy menstrual cycles. It's extreme pain. It causes infertility, which is what I experience. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I'm like, those darn fibroids, Yeah. Women shouldn't have to be faced with this. Our bodies are so complex. We deal with so many things. And when you look at the women of the world, and men, when you look at the women that's in your lives, they are running. They're running the families. When everybody else gets sick, they can't get sick. They got to go on. And when you think about the number of women that are suffering from uterine fibroids, and they are suffering with pain that literally wants to make you curl up in a bed and just be in the worst pain of your life, but yet they get up and they push through and they go on every single day. It needs to stop. They need to have better options than having their complete uterus removed and having all the complications that come along with that. It's way too extreme. And these women in childbearing age do not need to have to choose between whether or not they're going to put a future pregnancy at risk or whether they can have a quality of life. It needs to stop. It's going to stop, and we're so excited for all the people that have joined us on this journey so far.
Love it. Both of you very passionate. Know your stats. Very impressed with that too. And data. Both of you very entrenched in data. I think that's really key. So definitely there's an equity issue here, right? Closing these gaps. There's definitely that. We all love women in some way, whether we're married to them or we are one or have a child who's a female. I mean, it touches all of us. So that equity side, I think, is very compelling. There's also the financial side, right? The investment side, the dollars to be made from these types of things. So would love to hear from both of you, if you had the ear of investors, what would you like to educate them on when it comes to investing in women's health? What would you like to say to them? Go ahead, Anna.
So what I would like to say is that, as Anna presented earlier, and I know we referred to her presentation so many times because it was so good and provided so much information, is that women's health is a relatively new category that has been tracked for the last 5 years. What we are seeing is that there simply isn't enough data to show what do the exits look like in the space. And most investors, just like any people, right, they're saying, okay, if I want to be successful, they typically go where a lot of social proof is, or like hype, and they go to the past to see, okay, where have there been multiples of return? And today, the data isn't there. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So we actually started looking into what do the exits in the space look like beyond the 5 years that were tracked. And there are multiple billion-dollar exits, but they are rarely associated with women's health because the category was not yet created. So I think what's really important is, number one, getting the information out there about the exits and the return that is possible in the space, and also how much money and effort it does take to get medical products to the market, right? Whether they are being medical devices or diagnostics where we're in. And a lot of the funds, and now there's quite a few funds that are focused on women's health, they are typically not large enough to see the life cycle through of the companies, of the money and time they need to go necessarily through clinical trials and regulatory approvals in order to be launched. And what we're seeing is that seed stage companies, there is a lot of funds and environment around that. And later stage companies, you get to more general investors. And I think we're headed in the right direction, and it's really growing the amount of money that is managed by these funds, specifically looking at women's health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so from my standpoint, you know, to your point, you're exactly right. There's a lot more out there in women's health than what we know. I mean, if you look at from a return, it's very, very likely for a company to get anywhere between 3 to 7x return, which is typically what most companies strive for whenever they're going to exit. Small startup companies, that are coming to market, they're trying to be as capital efficient as they can. But if you take a look, for example, in our space directly, here just this past year, Hologics purchased Gynesonic for $380 million. Yeah. That's our competitor. I mean, when you look at a company like ours, where when we close this round, this will likely be the last round before we come to market for FDA approval, do a limited market launch, and then we hope to have an exit shortly after. That's been our strategy with every company that we have had an exit. This will be our 10th one. And when you look at that, it's going to be a total of $12 million invested in the company total from our standpoint. So if we could even get close to an exit like that, our investors are going to be very happy, and it's very likely to do that. Because we can point directly to a competitor in the market that's treating uterine fibroids. We can do it better, we can do it safer, and we're meeting an unmet need. So I think that makes it very exciting for potential investors to see this. I think that it goes back to really educating, which is why it's so important that these conferences like Bio Utah, I'm so happy that they have included a women's health track so that you can understand women's health a little bit more and understand, that the market opportunity is there. I know one of the talks earlier was talking about that market opportunity in women's health in excess of $1 trillion or more. That's absolutely the case. I feel like it is the forgotten, it's the forgotten opportunity.
Yeah.
It's been overshadowed for so long, but women make up 51% of the population. Our bodies are pretty important, and we've got so many complexities that, oh my gosh, innovation could last forever.
Yep.
And we still wouldn't even tip the iceberg of what a woman needs. And so what I would say to the investors that are here and out there is that the time is now to start investing in women's health. We're seeing the shift. We're seeing the excitement. We are truly in a pivotal time. And the innovation is strong. I mean, it is solid. I listened to a few of these companies that were up here, and this is just in Utah. That doesn't take into account all of the different companies that are out here, like the Empresses of the world. The technologies are absolutely game-changing, blow your mind, revolutionary technologies that are meeting incredible unmet needs and just really, really game changers. And that is every investor's dream.
Yep.
This market, and that's what I don't think most investors know, and I implore them so much to get involved and really dig deep into the women's health, because what you will find is that there are so much innovation that is literally being served to investors on a silver platter of what they're looking for, what their requirements are to invest, and what their potential returns can be. The time is now. It's not to wait and see. Be a part of it. Make the history. You won't be sorry.
Drop the mic. Wow, that pretty much summed it up.
I'm a little bit passionate about it.
I love it. Okay, so think about your questions, folks in the audience. I'm going to ask one more question of you two, then I'm going to turn to the audience. So think of your questions, get ready. I think we've got the microphones there. So my question for you are for fellow entrepreneurs and CEOs trying to be successful like you. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs out there trying to get into women's health?
I would say don't shy away from a hard problem.
Yeah.
There's a quote that we talk about all the time in our office, and passion is the fire that sets your soul on fire, right? And we're so passionate about women's health. We're so passionate about hearing from patients about what they're experiencing. And when we started working in ovarian cancer, the feedback that we got was so many companies have failed in ovarian cancer, or this has happened, or that has happened, and that's fine. They didn't do it, but maybe they didn't find the right niche. And I think there is so much that has to do with execution as well. That this is a really big problem that needs to be solved. And if you believe in it, you will find the investors, you will find the community. You have to network, you will find the patients that will support your journey to success.
Okay. All right.
What I will say to, you said female, right? Female, upcoming female. Yep.
Sure. Apply to female. Anyone who's trying to follow in your footsteps.
Thick skin. Have thick
That's
skin.
a good one.
I mean, if you have semi-thick skin, not going to cut it, thick skin, you're going to hear a lot of no's from a lot of people. You're going to have a lot of naysayers. You're going to have physicians, to look at your technology and snub it and say, no, I won't even give it the time of day. There's going to be, every day you're going to wake up in a headwind. That's just fact. But you have to know what you're doing is for the greater good. And you have to believe in your technology. You have to truly, truly believe in it with your heart and soul. It has to be your baby. You have to know that there is, and I know it sounds cliche, but there's no I in team. When you build your team, everybody wears each other's hats. You are going to be humbled more times than you've ever thought in your life. Yeah. As a CEO, you don't get an ego. You'll be crushed quickly. What I will say is, You will learn how to be a salesperson. You will learn how to be a marketing person. You will learn more about reimbursement than what you ever care to learn to in your life. You will hate the word local determination policies. You will learn to hate CMS. You will hate it all. But it's because you will have to learn all of this. You will be the jack of all trades, hopefully at least a master of one, but definitely you will have to know so much. And everybody on your team is going to have to know so much. You need to surround yourself with people who know more than you in every single thing. You need to be able to bring people on board who are leaders, who are go-getters, who are passionate, who really see the same visions, that you don't have to micromanage. Do not micromanage. If you micromanage in a startup, you're going to fail. I will say, really just take the opportunity and learn every day. Learn from your failures. Know that there's going to be many, but you're going to have so much success. And when those little wins come in, you're going to feel like you are flying so high. Enjoy it and then get right back to the grind. Enjoy the journey and just know that it's tough. There's nothing easy about it, but nothing, as they say, nothing worth having comes easy. Yep. And you will learn a lot about yourself. Be prepared to learn a lot about yourself, and just enjoy it. And I look forward to seeing all the future innovators, the future CEOs of women health companies and just different companies in general. I'm here. You can find me on LinkedIn. Always feel free to reach out. I'm happy to share any bit of knowledge, because, I believe in not reinventing the wheel. Learn from the people that's been there, done that, fell off the cliff and bought the T-shirt. And, I'm one of those. Yeah. So just say good luck and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's great advice from both of you. Really appreciate that. All right. Do we have any questions from our audience? Yes, go ahead.
Hello, this is a little tall for me. Hi, my name's Amanda Lingle. I have 2 questions, if that's okay. But first, this one's more towards Anna. One, I'm super big into women's health. I have a little femtech blog, and I highlighted your company like 2 years ago, so it's really cool to see someone from your company speaking, because I think you guys are really cool.
Thank you so much.
But one thing I was wondering, you were saying like part of the problem is like just getting doctors to be more equipped to diagnosing and understanding the symptoms for ovarian cancer. Mm-hmm. And what do you think is the best way to train doctors to get better equipped? Because I've been experiencing a similar problem with menopause. I tried last year in an innovation program to come up with ways to get doctors more equipped in understanding the symptoms of menopause, and it just seems it's really hard to get doctors to learn that once they're through medical school. So how have you tried to tackle that problem?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's a very important question. So vast majority of continuous medical education for clinicians actually comes from industry. It comes from sales reps. That's how they learn about a lot of new technologies. That's how they learn to potentially identify new or existing conditions. And in space like ovarian cancer or women's health in general, because it has been underinvested in, there are not so many innovations that clinicians are going in and that sales reps are going in and talking to clinicians about. So in the case of ovarian cancer, what I see is that when our test launches, we will have sales reps that are talking to the clinicians, right? There's sponsored talks at conferences, or even engaging with the medical community to publish on a particular problem or to think of it in a particular way where it can be solved, building the right models behind it. So even earlier today, I spoke to very much an academic who builds, let's say, financial models around how to diagnose certain conditions and where does it make sense in the healthcare paradigm for intervention. And so he looked at ovarian cancer, let's say, from a screening perspective. In the US, there's about 56 million postmenopausal women. He was like, if you screen ovarian cancer annually, that's not enough. You need to screen it every 6 months. Okay, there's no solution for ovarian cancer because it's not possible to screen all women every 4 to 6 months for a disease that 14,000 women will get diagnosed with. And so this is where industry is so important, is that they find a particular problem that has to be fixed. And when I spoke to him today, I said, okay, what if we look at this problem very differently? What if we're looking at this problem with those women who are already presenting to their provider, right? And you have to guide them in that direction. And so I think this is where the collaboration between industry and clinicians and researchers is so important, because I think clinicians from a research perspective and academics especially think of problems in a very different way than the ones you can actually solve with our existing healthcare medical system, right? And so it's really important to partner with them and see them as partners and somebody who can generate more information and disseminate that information. Because the other thing is, a lot of information from industry is often discounted, right? It does come through with a lens of money and dollars and profitability, and clinicians really want to make sure that they're doing best for the patient, which is also very important. And that's why it's so important to partner with them in different types of clinical trials, to position the information in a way that they can understand, that they trust, and that it can be disseminated as well.
That makes sense. Thank you. So my other question is for both of you. So a little bit about my background. My last quarter of college, I took a maternal health engineering class from my professor at Cal Poly, and it opened my eyes to all these women's health problems and how we need engineers more focused on women's health problems. And so what I found is there's a lot of us who've taken this class who are now in industry and are like, cool, we want to do women's health, but we couldn't figure out how to get a job in it, so we're all in these other med device jobs. Yeah. We actually started our own little monthly now femtech call, where it's just a bunch of us who all took this class from Cal Poly from different years, who are just trying to figure out how to get into more women's health and bringing other people into those calls. But there are a lot of women or engineers coming out of these colleges who are passionate about helping women's health and designing and innovating, but they just don't know how to actually get connected to those companies or get involved. So what would be your advice?
Anna? I can go first. Email us, LinkedIn me. I can tell you I have, number one, brought on several interns just because they were audacious enough to slide into my DMs on LinkedIn and be like, I really want to work for you, and this is why. One of our first scientists that we hired to be kind of like interestingly enough, a mass spec technician role, and now she runs our entire mass spectrometry lab just 2 years later, is she emailed me. She was like, I really care about ovarian cancer. You're in Denver. I am in Denver. I just got my PhD in this, and I want to work for you. And I was like, sure, come on in. And I mean, we had a conversation, and I made sure she was the right candidate, but that made sense, right? So I would say, go for it. The worst thing that could happen is that nobody will answer your message. That's a really low failure that isn't going to impact you all too much, but go for it. We had another person that we brought into the company where she made a whole website, and she was like, AOA is where I see myself growing, and this is why. And she didn't even send a resume. She sent this website, which today is so easy to build, and we were like, okay, this person is so passionate. They want to do what we want to do. And so I guess all of those people weren't afraid to stand out. A lot of times, certainly from screening resumes and waiting for open positions, you can get in, but it's a lot harder. So if this is something you're passionate about, and especially if it's a smaller company where you can, it's very easy to connect people and to message them, I would say just go for it.
So I second that. It's all of us have gotten, most people in the business world hasn't gotten there without effective networking and really just reaching out and utilizing as many connections, as possible. And again, that's where that thick skin comes in, because you have to be willing. If it's something that you really want to go for, you really got to go after it and kind of think outside the box. Definitely by reaching out on LinkedIn, you can link up with me too. I'll be happy to network with you and help you in any way that I can with connections. But if it were me, I'd be honest. I would start looking at going to some of these women's health conferences where some of these companies are going to be presenting. A lot of times their CEOs are there or someone from their upper management team is there. You can go and get a badge. It's like most of the time you can go in like $200 or something, and at least just be able to be on the floor and be bold about it. Go up and just say that you're there because you're interested in possibly joining their team, either as an intern or if there's some sort of opportunity for you. But those are the things that I would do. Is I would just really focus on all the events that you can that is geared towards women's health. Be involved and engaged in as many women's health things that you can possibly do, and just network and make those connections. And if you do all of that, success is going to come to you. I truly believe that success comes to those who work hard and really go after it.
Absolutely. All right. Those are great questions. Do we have any other questions? We have time for one more, I think.
Hi.
Yes.
My name is Justine Case. I am here primarily as a patient community advocate. And in that role, I've had the opportunity to meet with all sorts of stakeholders about ways of helping patients, obviously. Most of the patients I work with are women. And the thing that I heard you say that I want to speak to, is the importance of early detection. So I'm curious, as innovators, if you guys have looked at the possibility of bioinformatics and just information technology within the databases physicians are using, so that if there's this constellation of presenting symptoms that we already know means screen for ovarian cancer, if you know a way to leverage that or could think of it, because when I ask the end user, the physicians and the nurses, they say, well, the database I am reduced to and have to use because it's what my institution isn't capable of that. And so I'm just curious if this is something you guys have explored at all, or if it's in any way something that would interest you, because it seems to me a vacancy and an opportunity to assist in, instead of having to educate every single physician who ever graduated from medical school who's already out there and isn't interested in the CEUs all the time, is there a way to insert it into the technology already at hand?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And actually, they are doing that. They're piloting this project in the UK in their primary care setting because they have a single payer system. And because they have a single payer system and they have what I can only assume, I don't actually know this for sure, I believe Cerner does all of their EMR, right? Like electronic medical records and whatever system that they're working in. This is a project that they're going to be piloting, which is if you have this cluster of symptoms, the doctor gets a little alert, use this test. And so that's something they're going to look at. The test that they're going to be using is not super effective and is going to come with a host of other challenges. So yes, very interesting. We spoke with a professor out of a university in Seattle where she said she worked so hard to implement something like that in her hospital, and at the end they weren't able to do it because of the complexity of the US system specifically, and the fact that you have different healthcare systems who are buying these different systems, and then it costs so much money to recode them on the back end that she wasn't able to do it. The other challenge that she ran into is when the systems are set up, the way you choose the symptoms, what she specifically found is that most symptoms were typed into a text-free box, right? And if that happens, then you can't generate an alert. So is that a topic that is very interesting? I think for ovarian cancer and for many other conditions, the answer is absolutely yes. I think the back end of it is more difficult to achieve in a system like the US versus a single payer system that kind of sets up all of the hospitals and they're all interlinked. But I do think it's possible, and I do think that's a very worthwhile conversation.
And we are at time. So I want to thank you both. That was amazing. I loved all your insights. And this has been such a great discussion. I appreciate the questions.